Never too early to talk fantasy football. This is Football Nation. This is FFChamps.com. Let's bring in Billy Enright of FFChamps.com. Billy, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Butch. We're getting towards training camp. Really excited for fantasy football to start.
All right, let's talk about your, at FFChamps.com, 5 top value picks for the 2012 season. Define what you mean by value picks, first of all, Billy.
It's very simple. Any guy that has an average draft position, and I think that he's going to outperform where he's typically drafted according to his ADP.
Great. So you've got 5 guys as top value picks at this point heading into football season, and we're not even there yet. Let's go through them all. First one we have is BenJarvus Green-Ellis. Was a fantasy overperformer, overachiever in New England, now goes to Cincinnati. He had 24 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. He had a year with 1,000 yards in 2010, 13 touchdowns. He's only 26 years old. He doesn't catch the ball. So I'd imagine as a value pick, with Andy Dalton, you think he's in a perfect offense and he's still going to get goal line touches.
Yeah, to me, the best thing to evaluate BenJarvus Green-Ellis playing for the Bengals this year is to look at what Cedric Benson did the last couple of years, and that's 3 straight seasons of 1,000 yards with an average of 6 touchdowns. Now, when you're looking at BenJarvus Green-Ellis, he was in a timeshare running back by committee in New England. He only has 510 total carries. That's about an average of 127 per year. He's entering his 5th year in the league, so he's really fresh compared to other running backs that have maybe been in the league as long as him. A lot of people are talking about Bernard Scott and him kind of stealing carries away from BenJarvus Green-Ellis, but I can't see that happening. I think they're going to use Green-Ellis just like they use Benson, and that's as a workhorse running back. Great option as a number 2 running back with potential upside as a number 2, but he's a safe bet for your flex.
And again, I agree with you. As far as value pick, BenJarvus Green-Ellis is probably the poster boy. Marshawn Lynch is your next guy. Clearly a career year in Seattle last year. Over 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, even 28 receptions. He had 2 great fantasy years to start his career in Buffalo.
Right.
Come on, Billy. This guy's a knucklehead. I'm going to draft him, and he's going to do something stupid. He always does,
How much trouble can you really get in Seattle? I mean, that's basically Canada. You know, you mentioned his 12 touchdowns last year, 1,200 yards. That was good enough for him to finish as a top 5 running back in 2011. But now that we're in 2012, what's happening? He's not getting drafted until the late 2nd, early 3rd round. And then this is a guy that can play as your number 1. So if he's going that late, that means you can draft him as your number 2 running back, thinking that you take a running back in the 1st round, and then all of a sudden you have a great 1-2 punch to really build a great foundation for your team.
All right, the next guy you have, speaking of knuckleheads, Brandon Marshall fits into that category too. All right, I know he left Miami, 2 subpar fantasy years there. I drafted him too high both years, so I know all too well. He's reunited with Jay Cutler. The Bears have a better defense. That division, the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings, horrible pass defenses compared to a lot of other defenses. But come on, he's a knucklehead too. He's reunited with Jay Cutler. Isn't he going to get drafted too high?
I don't think so. Right now, he's getting drafted as a top 15 wide receiver, which is great. But I think he's going to perform as a top 5 wide receiver if you're in a PPR league. There's no question in my mind Brandon Marshall's going to finish with 90-plus receptions now that he's reunited with Jay Cutler. Look at what they did when they were together on the Denver Broncos. 3 straight seasons of at least 100 receptions, 3 straight seasons of at least 1,100 yards, and he had 23 touchdowns during that time. The Chicago Bears and Jay Cutler are desperate for a playmaker. Brandon Marshall is going to be a superstar this year with the Chicago Bears.
Your next guy is a top value pick in fantasy football for 2012 is Eric Decker. I get the logic here. He's in Denver. Demaryius Thomas is the number 1 guy, but you must believe that Peyton Manning's going to be the Peyton Manning of old.
Yeah, I do. And you look at what Decker did last year with Kyle Orton and Tim Tebow throwing in the ball. He finished with 8 touchdowns. He had 44 receptions, and he had about 600 yards. That was only his 2nd year in the league. Now, fantasy football managers, for some reason, we think if you're a 3rd-year wide receiver, you're poised to break out, and I'm buying that. I'm buying that with Eric Decker because I think he's getting overshadowed by his teammate, like you mentioned, Demaryius Thomas. But Peyton Manning and Eric Decker have already come out and said they have really good chemistry on the field. He's being picked as like the 72nd overall player in fantasy football. That's somewhere in the 7th round in a 12-team standard league. And I think he has enough upside to be a lock as your wide receiver number 2. And if you're getting him in the 7th round, that means you can really stack up on other players earlier in the draft and still have a reliable option to plug into your lineup.
Your fifth value pick out of your top 5 is Aaron Hernandez, tight end for the Patriots. Yes. I love this one for a lot of reasons. He was 31st in the NFL last year in yards for all receivers at 910. He was tied for 21st with 7 touchdowns. He had more yards and touchdowns than guys like Bolden, Macklin, Crabtree, and Laurent Robinson. And he's not even the #1 tight end on his own team behind Gronkowski. You're not drafting him ahead of Graham, Gronkowski, or Witten, but you're drafting him up there with Gates, Vernon Davis, Jermaine Finley, and Tony Gonzalez, aren't you?
I'm taking him before all those guys. Listen, Rob Gronkowski gets all the love, and rightfully so. The guy's a monster on the field. But look at what Aaron Hernandez did last year. His numbers would be top tight end numbers for any other team other than the New England Patriots. Almost 80 receptions, just shy of 1,000 yards, and he got in the end zone 7 times. I agree, Graham, Gronkowski, and Witten are my top 3, but I'm putting Hernandez right in there in that 4 slot. And the thing is, Jermichael Finley, Vernon Davis, and Antonio Gates are all getting drafted ahead of Hernandez. So let your opponents draft those guys, and then you pick up Hernandez later on. You'll be very, very happy.
He's Billy Enright. FFChamps.com is your authority when it comes to fantasy football. Never too early. Talk about the 2012 season. Once again, the 5 great value picks for 2012. BenJarvus Green-Ellis, Marshawn Lynch, Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, and Aaron Hernandez. This is Football Nation.